Welcome to the Total Soccer Show and our latest batch of listener questions. On today's show, we're debating Kevin de Bruyne's next move. We're seeing if we can release John Brooks from national team exile. We're asking why the Confederations Cup ain't a thing anymore, and much, much more. My name's Ryan Bailey. Joining me today, Taylor Rockwell. Taylor, how are you, sir?
I am doing splendid. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing wonderfully. Taylor,
So polite.
often and joyfully has birdsong in the background of his recording and did so this morning as well. It's sounding wonderful where you are in Virginia.
Thank you. Yes, it's lovely outside. It's a spring day. It's beautiful. I can't wait to be outside. But for now, I'm more excited to be here talking about Kevin de Bruyne and John Brooks with you fine fellows.
It's actually a Zoom soundtrack. It's like Joe's Palm Tree. It's not real.
Graham Ruthven, how are you, sir? Got some sort of grey-looking pigeons circling your house today, have you?
As always.
There it is. All right.
Vultures, perhaps. I think. How are you, Ryan Bailey? Are you all packed to visit my spiritual home this weekend? Not that I am jealous at all.
I'm spending the weekend in America's Scrod Bucket, a.k.a. Graham's spiritual home, so I'm looking forward to that very much.
But yet not going to any of the parks. What are you going to do for 4 days? Just a whole weekend at Fogo de Chao?
Just churros all weekend long.
Right.
That's it. Yeah.
You're actually going on a Blue Origin space flight with Katy Perry.
Yeah. I'm a man of the people, Graham, as you know. So that's why I'm doing this weekend. That should be a lot of fun. Lots of adventure golf and churros for me this weekend, but no mouse house. Yeah, there we go. Joe Lowry, how are you, sir? Do you get birds in Arizona, or do they sort of burn up on entry?
Sorry, you mean cactus? Yeah, we got plenty of cactus. No worries on that front. On the churro front, I'm going to say it, guys. I'm going to be brave enough to say it. Churros are overrated. Like, vastly so.
I mean, it depends. You need a dip. Like, dry, dreadful. But with a caramel dip, or like chocolate, I'll accept that.
Dreadful? We're going with dreadful?
I mean,
churros?
I think dreadful is probably a bit too far. But if your churro needs a dip, you got to really consider like what you're prioritizing.
Wait a minute. Hold on. At the risk of going further into this, I believe Joe Lowry is the advocate of sauce. No? That like sauce makes everything better. Sauce adds flavor. So now you're anti-dip, but you're pro sauce?
Oh, a saucy boy to the max. Yeah, no doubt about that. I'm not, again, churros are good. I'm just saying that they're overrated, and I feel like the number of times you bite into a churro and taste oil and nothing else is way too high.
Churro.
That's all I'm saying. Yeah, and those are plentiful, Graham. That's all I'm saying.
Joe, just so I can learn a bit more about your profile, when you have a steak, will you have a sauce with it?
I'm not opposed to some sort of pan sauce, but I certainly don't think it needs a sauce. But I'm very open to it, no doubt.
Yeah, a rub in some garlic butter.
Yeah. Now we're talking. I'm down.
Rub
Salt and
yourself in
pepper.
some garlic butter.
I was trying to make a joke
salt and pepper.
and the steak can be medium well too, but I couldn't quite get there.
That was excellent, Graham. Well played.
Wonderful stuff. Plenty to get to in the listener questions mailbag this week, you fine gentlemen. Before we get there, patreon.com/Total Soccer Show is where you'll find our bonus content, bonus chats including but not limited to bonus listener questions. We've got our Discord where all the cool kids are hanging out. Bonus video on there as well. Patreon.com/Total Soccer Show. They're all saying it's the best way to support us. Think about it. Thank you very much indeed. All right, Graham, you look ready for some listener questions. Should we do it?
Let's do it.
Hands rubbed together appropriately. Bobby Docs Tater has been in touch with this one. What do you all think of this move in the summer? Kevin de Bruyne to Real Madrid. He seems like the ultimate Toni Kroos replacement. They never made it with the legs of Bellingham, Valverde, Tchouaméni and Camavinga around him. Surely he can show how good he is still in La Liga. Now, this is a very interesting one, Graham. I'm not convinced that Kevin de Bruyne has concluded his time in Europe. We don't know as we record what his next move would be. Obviously, rumours tying him with Major League Soccer. I could see him maybe mirroring that Gundogan path into continental Europe, maybe even sliding back to the Premier League again. I don't know. What do you think, Graham?
I've got a lot of mixed thoughts on that. I am surprised that De Bruyne didn't drop deeper for City over the course of his career in the way that Paul Scholes did later in his career. And with Scholes, I actually thought, Taylor, I don't know about your thoughts on this as a Man United fan, I actually thought that latter version of Paul Scholes was the best version of Paul Scholes, where he was dictating games ahead of him. And I don't know, I felt like De Bruyne might over time become that player, and maybe this season was the time for him to do that with obviously Rodri. I'm kind of thinking of that position in different ways, but nonetheless, there's a place at the base of that midfield for Man City this season. What I will say is that the game has changed quite a bit since Scholes was able to play at the base of the midfield for Manchester United. So I guess Man United had Carrick and Scholes to control games but Scholes' legs had gone in those final few years, and I don't know if he'd be able to play that same role in 2025, particularly in the Premier League, which is, in my opinion, probably the most physical and intense league in the world.
He'd look as good as any current Manchester United player looks trying to do it.
That is a low bar. He'd look as good as Casemiro does trying to play that role. But I look at players like Rodri and Declan Rice, and Declan Rice is maybe a bit more of a number 8 these days, but these players have incredible energy and physicality, and watching De Bruyne for City this season, that's kind of what I think he has lost, and that's where I would disagree with you, Ryan, on where Kevin De Bruyne should go next. I do question whether he has the legs for elite level European football at this point. Now, if he goes to Serie A or even La Liga, which is a slower pace, I watch loads of La Liga, and I think that's a fair assessment to make. Maybe that does suit him well, but I don't know if he is. I don't know if he has the physicality that Real Madrid are looking for at the base of midfield. I don't know if he's actually a rhythm builder either. When I think of Kevin De Bruyne on the ball, it's his like passing range and creativity high up the pitch. And look, Scholes, I've drawn this comparison already. Scholes was able to translate those things because he was similar early in his career, and then he became a rhythm builder and he became a Xavi Light later in his career. So maybe Kevin De Bruyne would have that in him, but he seems like a slightly awkward fit for the player that I think Real Madrid are lacking in that midfield.
Yeah, that's interesting about the physicality, because certainly when you look at the second leg against Arsenal, where they seem to try and poop house their way in through the entire game, maybe that's not a good profile fit. Taylor, I think he said, Kevin De Bruyne, when he had a really good showing this past weekend, that it was the first time he's played in a while without injury, pain from injury. So when he is free of pain, he seems to be rather good. So if he can stay injury-free, in theory, he could extend his time in Europe. Yeah?
Yeah, I think he could extend his time in Europe. I don't think it should be with Real Madrid. If this were a take it or leave it, I am probably leaving this one for 2 reasons. There's the Kroos comparison that's been made. There's maybe a Modric comparison about dropping deeper and trying to control play a bit more. I would argue both of them were maybe allowed to do that more naturally in their evolution at Real Madrid because they have been there. So the team can kind of naturally adjust to them. They know where they fit in. They are okay with being on the bench on occasion. Modric now in the present tense, Kroos in the past tense. So when you bring in somebody like Kevin De Bruyne, there isn't that organic sort of development. There is a new player that you now have to find a way to kind of make fit and make sure you are making fit. And if he doesn't, it becomes a problem. And I'm not sure he is what they need right now. I'm not sure he is a problem that they need to solve right now, put it that way. Especially after this week, I think maybe their transfer window will be spent looking at defenders more so than midfielders who can theoretically still play. Maybe they will go for him because that's something they've done in the past with players who can kind of arrive for cheaper but still have the profile that Real Madrid would normally want. But I think they need a bit more defensive stability and defensive depth at that than they do Kevin De Bruyne, unless he can play center back. We've never seen. Maybe he drops even further back. He just bypasses defensive midfield entirely and becomes a center back.
Stranger things have happened. Joe, what do you think? De Bruyne to Real Madrid. Could you see it?
I could see it. I have a hard time seeing it if Luka Modric is going to come back. That's my top line answer to all of this. I feel like Luka Modric is Kevin De Bruyne in this situation already for Real Madrid, and Bobby gets at this in the question. Those players need some runners around them or they need a very, very controlled system around them to limit the amount of running that they have to do, right? That's not Kevin De Bruyne's game at this point. That's certainly not Luka Modric's game at this point. And at Man City, Pep Guardiola has a very controlled setup with very detailed positioning around Kevin De Bruyne and around every player on that team. At Real Madrid, he wouldn't have that, but what Luka Modric has at Real Madrid is Tchouaméni to do a bunch of that running and Camavinga to do a bunch of that running around Valverde in midfield, as Bobby says. I think if Luka Modric comes back, and I believe his contract expires at the end of this year, but he's come out and recently become a minority owner in Swansea, and part of that whole reporting was this doesn't affect his future with Real Madrid. He still wants to keep playing. He wants to play until at least the World Cup in next summer. So if Luka Modric stays, I certainly don't think Real Madrid would have room, logically, to fit a Kevin De Bruyne type into that team. And I also don't think he is really at all like a Toni Kroos replacement positionally, where Kroos tended to be a much deeper player and De Bruyne has tended to play a lot higher. Not that there isn't some overlap in their skills. I think there's something there from Bobby's perspective. But it really does feel to me, Ryan, I know you were talking about where does De Bruyne go next. It really does feel like to me that there is a lot of smoke about him coming to Major League Soccer. And there was reporting yesterday from The Athletic and Paul Tenorio and Pablo Maurer, our friends over there, that between Miami and Chicago and NYCFC and DC United, there are 4 MLS teams that are seriously interested in bringing De Bruyne to the United States. From stuff I've heard in the past as well, I kind of do think that is the most likely option for him. But he's a talented guy, even still, and we saw this recently. He's going to have options one way or the other, and you can bet that he does, even outside of the United States.
Joe, of those MLS teams you mentioned, is there one where you prefer to see him land?
I saw there's that meme of the 4 dragons, and it's like, 3 of them are looking really serious, and one's got that, like the crazy one with the tongue out of the mouth, right? I saw somebody on our Discord had this meme yesterday, and the 3 normal ones were Miami, NYCFC, and Chicago. Chicago, congrats, you've graduated. Yeah, and the 4th one was DC United, which was just so funny to me.
He would melt or explode in the Washington heat and humidity, and that's before he had to actually play for DC United.
Oh, man, Florida's no picnic either. But, I mean, I would say Chicago would be the most interesting one to me, and I tweeted about this yesterday when Fabrizio Romano was posting about the real interest there. The Fire are a competent team for the first time in a really long time, and they're a fun team for the first time in a long time, and they've got that last DP spot open. I mean, all these teams, bar Miami, have some flexibility at the top of their rosters, but De Bruyne would fit well in this possession system that Berhalter has brought about in Chicago, and I think he would be a really, really fun piece to add to the attack along with Bamba and Hugo Kuipers. I would love him to go to Chicago. I think that would be my favorite option for him as a neutral. But I just like watching Kevin De Bruyne play. So if he's going somewhere where I'm going to watch him more, I'm in favor of that.
Hey Joe, do you want to see my impression of Kevin De Bruyne at DC United?
Please.
This is for the YouTube viewers only. It's just him watching the goalkeeper kick it long.
Benteke on one side, goalkeeper on the other, baby. Yep. Well played.
That's pretty much it.
Well played. Yeah, I mean, DC being involved in this is wild to me, right? This is a DC United team that doesn't spend a lot of money on the first team roster, except apparently when they can grab a 2015 Premier League player. Like I don't know what they're doing. Like I truly have no idea remember those links to Mesut Ozil for a while, and then the whole Wayne Rooney coaching era, which was a fever dream in and of itself.
Well, I think the way that they're affording this is he has to sleep in Wayne Rooney's dorm room that he had, that he shared with the youth team players.
Makes sense.
DC, yeah, so
makes sense. That way. It's just mind-boggling to me, truly, what's happening with DC United. So, yeah, we'll see. But De Bruyne to Real Madrid, I'm just not sure makes a lot of sense at the end of the day.
You've just got me off at a tangent there. Do you guys have you seen what Mesut Ozil looks like these days?
Yes, I have.
He's buff. No. He's a beefcake now.
He's done a Fernando Torres.
Yeah. He's had some protein shakes. Has Mesut Ozil? Power to him, quite literally. Bobby Doc Status, thank you very much.
Erdogan's bodyguard now. He's got to bulk up a little bit,
Pretty much wow! What I've read, really, to be honest.
Yeah, there you go. All right.
Yeah. Erdogan was in his wedding, I believe. So there you go. Yeah, good times.
Not married to Erdogan,
which part? Yeah.
Yeah, definitely not that one. That can get you arrested in Turkey, I'm pretty sure.
Bobby Dog Stater, thank you very much for that question. Trent McGivers has been in touch with this one. Starting next season, who wins more major trophies over the next 2 seasons? Is it Salah and Van Dijk at Liverpool, or Trent at Real Madrid? And get this, Trent's criteria for major trophies includes the league, cup competitions, Champions League, Europa, etc., and Ballon d'Or. Ballon d'Or's in the mix.
Ballon d'Or.
Wow.
Rio is in the room with us.
Rio is listening right now.
I hope not.
Joe, let's start with you. What do you think? I suppose, does it ultimately depend who Real Madrid's manager is next season? Does that have a bearing, or does that not really have a bearing when it comes to Real Madrid?
For me, it doesn't have a huge bearing. I mean, the whole Carlo Ancelotti thing is that he kind of trots the players out there and lets them find solutions. And that has had a lot of success for Real Madrid. It also has clear downsides, as I've talked about before, and we saw this past week. I don't think this is close, like, at all. I'm really curious to hear what you guys think the answer to this question is. Graham's giving me eyes like I'm a crazy person. It's got to be Real Madrid, right? They have so much less competition in their domestic trophy races, right? I still think Liverpool are going to be a really good team next year, even without Trent Alexander-Arnold. I think they will be up against, though, stiffer competition. Man City's going to be better in all likelihood next season. Arsenal will be healthier because it would be almost impossible for them not to be. The Premier League as a whole beats you down in a way that La Liga simply does not. And I know Premier League teams aren't jetting off to the Middle East to play cup competitions in the middle of the season, but still, the lack of competition for Real Madrid at the top of La Liga, yes, you have Barcelona, yes, you have Atletico Madrid. Still, they are going to have an easier time getting to the La Liga title race and being a real player in that. They're going to have an easier time getting deep in Copa del Rey and Cup. It's just simpler for them to go out there and win trophies. Maybe Mo Salah winning the Ballon d'Or completely scuttles my entire plan here. I doubt it. I think it is easier to win trophies as a big spender in Spain than it is as a big spender in England.
Okay. Graham, you're nodding along sagely with that assessment?
Yeah, I am. Joe's done a good job of outlining the fact there's just more competition in the Premier League. You would say, feasibly next season, 3 teams could win the title. Season after that, you could even stretch it as far as 4 or 5 that are potentially looking to get up there. And in Spain, it's,
you're
most
including
seasons,
Wrexham in that, Graham.
Of course, yeah, Wrexham or Birmingham, the way that they're going. But in Spain, most seasons he will have a 1 in 2 chance of winning the league. At worst, it'll be a 1 in 3 chance if Atleti are having a good season. And in the last 15 seasons, the Copa has been won by one of either Barca or Real Madrid 10 times in the last 15 seasons. You look at the FA Cup, has been won by 5 different teams in the last 5 seasons. So, there's just more competition in England. It also wouldn't surprise me, and look, I said this last year, if I say it often enough, I'll get it right one of these years. It wouldn't surprise me if Liverpool have a bit of a dip next season. I think their squad was in a really good place this season where they had a lot of depth, but I think there's a chance that some of those depth pieces leave at the end of this season. I know Jarrell Kwanzaa, for example, has been linked with Newcastle. Luis Diaz keeps getting linked with a move away. That's been happening for like a full year now. You can keep everyone happy until a certain point, and then you have to shed some players. And I predict Liverpool will shed a bit this summer. Of course, they'll probably make some signings. They didn't do any of that last summer, so they probably get some new pieces in, and that maybe mitigates it. But that's still a difficult task to keep your squad as strong as it has been this season.
Yep, agree with everything that's been said so far. Just to emphasize, Liverpool last won the title in the 2019-2020 season. Real Madrid won it that season as well, and then have won it twice since then. Madrid has won 2 Champions Leagues since Liverpool won theirs. So already you can see that Real Madrid more likely to win the silverware if there were going to be a downturn in form for Liverpool, Graham, like next season. Maybe you could make the argument that there will be one for Real Madrid as well, given the way they went out of the Champions League. Though that was still in the quarterfinals, that was still to a very good Arsenal team. It's strange to me how it's been painted as this abject failure, I think, because Real Madrid have set the bar so high. But even if they were to have a bad year next year, even if they don't win anything that next season, Real Madrid don't really tend to sit around and be okay with not winning silverware. I think the only period in like the more modern era that I can remember when they went a good long while without winning consistently was when you had Pep at Barcelona and when you had Luis Enrique at Barcelona. When you had sort of generational talents and generational teams that they could not find a way to get past on a consistent basis. I don't think you really have that with this Barcelona team. I don't think you have it with Atleti either. So even if both of them finish 1 and 2 next season and Real Madrid finishes 3rd, they're still in the Champions League spots. They're still a very strong team. They're always going to have the global branding. They're always going to have appeal to bringing in players, and I think they're always likely to win at least a good amount of silverware in the next 5 years or so. I don't think any of these players wins the Ballon d'Or, so I think that's kind of moot. League Player of the Year leans maybe Salah of the 3, so maybe they gained some ground there. I think that was one of the options for potential silverware, but overall, I still give it to Trent Alexander-Arnold and Real Madrid.
You don't think there would be any Ballon d'Or candidates between these 2 teams over the next 2 years?
Between these
Trent.
2 teams,
Trent
but not these players. Yeah, because for it to, in my mind, for it to count as like these players winning more silverware, one of them would have to win Ballon d'Or, unless Trent Alexander-Arnold gets to like lift it up for Jude Bellingham, maybe. Then maybe that's how
like
it works. I'm not really sure. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. It's like little Ballon d'Or consigliere. He just holds it for him.
I don't know if a defender can actually win the Ballon d'Or in 2025 or in current soccer. Joe has no juice for this conversation whatsoever. But Cannavaro won it. Was the last
what if
defender
Joe did? What if Joe just came in steamrolling with a
Are
hard
you
take
kidding
that,
me?
like,
Of course not.
exactly.
Yeah, I got nothing.
I just think the way that people talk about individual awards now, it's just purely goals and assists. That's a byproduct of the Messi and Ronaldo era.
More of Joe's favorite stuff.
Yeah,
I mean, we are coming off of a year where Rodri won the Ballon d'Or and doesn't score or get assists.
That is a brilliant argument, Joe, in counter to what the point I'm just making. But I don't know. I still think a defender is one step further.
Fair.
All right. Trent McGivers, thank you very much indeed for your question. It's break time. When we come back, we're talking John Brooks. We're talking about Reading FC. What's going on in West Berkshire, wherever Reading is. Join us then. Total Soccer Show, welcome back to our listener questions. We go to Diego Moon, who says, with our issues at centre-back, why is John Brooks still in exile? He's only 32 and getting good minutes in the Zweite Bundesliga. He's always looked solid in a US shirt. Yes, Taylor sighs. Do we have a problem with the premise at all here,
A little bit. He is only 32. That much is true.
Only?
He has not played a single minute this season. He has not played since May of 2024, I believe due to an ankle injury. I couldn't find much more specificity than that, so make of that what you will. But he has not played at all this year. My understanding of his move to Hoffenheim in the season before that, or whenever he moved to Hoffenheim, from my conversations with Manuel Faith on this show, is that a lot of that had to do with his agent having a connection to the ownership and Hoffenheim trying to basically slash costs to the extent they could. So cheap players with some Bundesliga experience were going to be prioritized. But even there, they don't retain him. And that is a theme of John Brooks of late, is managers, even when they need players, even when he should fit the bill, not really wanted to keep him around, which I think speaks to off-field issues. But to speak to on-field issues, aside from the fact that he is not playing, I would also take issue with the idea that he has always looked solid with the United States. I think there have been games when he has been excellent. I think there have been games when he has been the best defender on the pitch for the U.S. There have also been games that Joe and I have talked about on this very show in which he is kind of a liability 1v1 when he doesn't really know when to step. His decision-making in when to step, when to close down versus when to sit off has been a concern for the United States. You could argue that's the people around him. You could argue that's Greg Berhalter. But I think all of that paints a picture of a player who is injured, first of all, hasn't always looked strong with the U.S., has maybe had off-field issues, temperament issues, whatever you want to go with. So I think all of those things rolled together is why Mauricio Pochettino is not yet rolling the dice on a player who, I mean, he could not play at present because he is injured.
So, Joe, what do we think? Is there any way back for John Brooks? I'm not sure where to go with the questions at this point.
I think Taylor summarized my thoughts quite well on this. Also, I want to say shout out to Diego Moon. Almost certainly a Diego Luna play there. Well done on that part. Diego Luna met Diego Luna.
Yes.
Yeah, yes. Let's go. Graham and Ryan did not see this clearly.
Nope.
The actor Diego Luna and the soccer player Diego
would not
Luna
have
met
cared.
each other.
But anyway,
yeah. No, it was great.
Did they really? I didn't actually see
wow,
that.
Graham, way to get on board like 12 years after the rest of us.
Sorry.
No, that's all right.
As Joe and I overtalked for 30 seconds. Primarily me overtalking Joe.
It was a good moment, Taylor.
Yeah.
I liked it.
Whenever I Google Diego Luna, I'm always presented with the actor. When are Chicago Fire, the TV show, and Chicago Fire, the football club, going to meet each other?
That's coming next at the World Cup when Chicago's in the World Cup. Obviously,
if Diego Luna were to make a guest spot on Chicago Fire, the TV series, and then Diego Luna, the player, moved to Chicago Fire, we would have lots of problems.
Hold on. SEO nightmare right there, folks. Yeah, I think Taylor hit this on the head as far as, is there a way back for John Brooks? Maybe. I don't see it happening, but I think it's totally possible. He would need, though, to get back to playing, first of all, and he would probably need some chopping and changing ahead of him in the U.S. center back pecking order. The thing that stands out to me here that I think wasn't covered by Taylor is, outside of the fact that Brooks has not always been good for the U.S., World Cup qualifying issues in 2021, mobility is a huge problem for him. He is a really similar profile to Tim Ream. They're both left-footed passers, first and foremost. Now, what Brooks is that Ream isn't is a set-piece threat. The question of can Tim Ream jump will rage until the end of time. But really, in open play, these two guys are very similar players on the ball in possession, and that's something that Mauricio Pochettino values and thinks about. But Greg Berhalter made the choice that Ream was above Brooks in that very specific in-possession profile. And Pochettino has not even had a choice to make there because John Brooks hasn't been healthy. So if something happens to Tim Ream and he is not fit for a camp and John Brooks is back and fit and playing regularly and playing well, I think it's possible. Do I think it is likely? I really, really do not. This is another one for me where we've joked, and it's a joke at this point. Like I like to poke fun about it. The trusty CCV pairing and how we should see that for the U.S., which I'm not opposed to. I'm not opposed to any of this. Like, you could call John Brooks up if he's healthy tomorrow, and I'd be totally fine with that. I think there is just so little separating these players from each other outside of the guys I tried to draft on my USMNT team that nobody really appreciated. I think Richards and Mark McKenzie and Tim Ream are the top three names on the center back depth chart. If one of those guys is hurt, or if you have some chopping and changing happen for whatever reason, you can go almost anywhere in the top 8 or so names in the center back depth chart, and I don't think anybody is really going to bat an eye.
One last thing on this. I think if he were, like, let's say he comes back next season, he's 33 in next January, I believe. But let's say he comes back next season, he's playing well, or well enough to maybe get consideration. If Pochettino is watching every single game and deciding players, then maybe he gets a look. If there was some sort of falling out, some sort of bad blood, some sort of incident with U.S. soccer, or just with Greg Berhalter and the U.S. men's team, with John Brooks, and that's why he doesn't get caught up again under Berhalter, and there is still a memory of that at U.S. soccer, if he is playing well enough that Pochettino asks U.S. soccer personnel, hey, what do you think of John Brooks? And they give him a negative report. Like, I wonder if he is then going to get looks past that point. So I feel like he would have to maybe be at a level where you almost can't not call him up. And I don't know if he can get back to that level in the time frame that would be required.
Fair enough. By the way, I'm today years old when I realised there was an actor called Diego Luna.
He's an Andor.
Yeah,
That's very good.
I've not seen Andor, Graham.
Ryan, we're just getting Ryan caught up on Star
Wars.
Wars. We're getting him there.
I've watched all the Star Wars movies. I've not watched
Have you
all
seen
the
Rogue One?
billions of TV shows.
Have you seen Rogue One or no?
Yeah, is he in that?
Yeah, he's in that.
Yeah, it's in that.
cool.
It's also very good. Those are the two best modern Star Wars things.
He's also in
Rogue One.
DC League of Super Pets, it says here on his Wikipedia.
oh, of
which sounds
course.
wonderful. That sounds delightful.
DCL.
Somebody needed to remodel that bathroom.
That reminds me of the famous Michael Caine quote when, was it Jaws 3 he was in?
Jaws
And,
4. Jaws the
Jaws
Revenge,
4.
yes.
And the journalist said, it's known as a bad movie. And
Yes.
a journalist asked him, have you seen this movie? And he said, no, but I've seen the house it built in the Caribbean.
Nice.
Lovely.
Respect, honestly.
Respect. Gotta love.
Yeah, I think that's what Tim Roth said about making the FIFA movie as well. Like, my daughter goes to private school. You got to pay for it somehow.
All right, Diego Moon, thank you very much indeed for your question. Scott Goodhart has come in here with what is going on with Reading FC's ownership and possible administration. Is this a symptom of something wider with the EFL or just a case of a terrible owner? It's certainly the latter, Graham. Reading are 6th in League One. They're chasing promotion, but it's all a bit messy behind the scenes. This past Wednesday, they had a winding up petition that was put up in March by a football agency. That was withdrawn. They've had a few winding up petitions, finish off the business, go into administration type situations over the last couple of years. And last month, the EFL announced that their owner, Dai Yong, has been officially disqualified under the owner's fit and proper test.
Yeah.
He's been ordered to sell the club by April, which is now.
Yeah, this is a story that has rumbled on for years and years, and it's got to the point now where it's difficult. It's one of those stories where it's difficult to know where it starts, right? So it actually starts. I think you can obviously the most obvious starting point is when Dai Young buys the club in 2017, but you can trace it back to John Majeski, who it was the long-time owner of Reading, very much credited with turning Reading into a club that won promotion to the Premier League. The stadium is named after him, the Majeski Stadium. I think he's a local businessman, a fan. But he decides to...
He owns the local paper company, I think, Graham.
Does he?
Wernham Hogg, yeah.
Right. Is that a joke that's gone over my head there?
Yeah, The Office, Slough, Reading, it's all the same area.
I'm going to guess it went over 99.1% of listeners. That's being conservative.
Don't regret it.
If you referenced the American one, if you said Dunder Mifflin, I would have got that. But it's been a long time since I've seen the British one. There's only 6 episodes. Maybe I should refresh my memory of that in the next few weeks. But anyway, he sold it to the son of a Russian oligarch. Took it back under his control a year later because basically the club was getting into trouble. There was another owner called Lady Sassima, great name, who sold a lot of the land around the stadium, was accused of corruption there as well. So Young comes in, starts spending a lot of money. They break their transfer record twice very quickly. They build a new training ground. All the signs are he's going to spend money for years and years to come. But very quickly, the Reading start to fall foul of the EFL's profit and sustainability rules.
He kept spending. That's just kind of the problem.
They doubled their wage bill very, very quickly. It's difficult to keep track of how many points deductions they had over like a 2-season period. They got one 6-point deduction, then another 6-point deduction. That ultimately results in them being relegated in the 2021-22 season when it's not just the points deduction that result in that, but they have a bad team, and then they go down to League One for the first time in 22 years. The money starts to dry up, or at least the investments from China start to dry up. Reading start the 22-23 season with basically no team, no players, no manager. The season kicks off in 2 weeks. They don't have anyone to play those games. Players weren't paid on time on multiple occasions. Then HMRC, which is the tax agency in the UK, IRS, hit Reading with a winding up order for unpaid tax. They actually had 4 of these orders from HMRC alone in just 18 months. They get another points deduction from the league, and then you start to get a bit of backlash from fans, which is what listeners might have seen recently. They've done things like throwing tennis balls onto the pitch. I think they had a game abandoned as well. The protest group is called Sell Before We Die, obviously playing words on Da Yong's name. And Yong has implied that he is willing to sell the club. As you mentioned, Ryan, the EFL have now ordered him to sell the club. They disqualified him as an owner, but he has essentially rejected every offer that has come his way. So there's a legal situation here of how much pressure can you apply to force someone to sell a football club. But just last week, I think it was reported that they're in advanced talks with a buyer. So maybe this nightmare will end soon, but Reading are a shell of the club that was in the Premier League not so long ago.
I would really put a lot of emphasis under that maybe at the end of Graham's story there, sadly, because he was initially given, until April 4th to sell the club. Then he got the extension until the 22nd of April. Not a huge extension, really, to get that business done. So at time of recording, it has not yet happened. We will see if it does, because if it does not, they could just suspend Reading, basically, and prevent them from playing matches. And at that point, they're going to fall significantly further down the table if they're not able to play games and win points. And it is a Reading team that have, despite all of this, I think come together and fought really well, fought really admirably, despite having to sell some of their best players, including to direct rivals, like Wrexham picking up Sam Smith for 2.4 million euros. Like, that's a player who has made them significantly better.
There's other Sam Smith.
I would have thought his voice would have been worth more than 2.4
Let's
million.
hope so. Yeah. So it must be a really depressing and frustrating situation for Reading supporters, of whom there are many trying to get some level of control at the club. I think they came together to help finance an extended stay when they were going for a long road, a long away day. The supporters trust had to pay for a hotel so that the players didn't have to hustle back so that there weren't additional expenses. It just feels like a really chaotic situation. And to Graham's point, I got lost in the weeds here trying to track the number of points deductions and the number of PSR breaches, because it just kept happening so casually. And here's a point deduction, here's a point I think they got 3 in one season, and then maybe a 4th retroactively. So it's difficult to track that alone, certainly to track their spending, and certainly to know what will happen to them going forward.
Yeah. I mean, the part of Scott's question where he asks if this is a symptom of something wider within the EFL, I mean, it's safe to say it can be precarious being an EFL team financially, but it has to be an outlier to have an owner this problematic, surely, right?
Yes, I think so. I think one thing that maybe this is indicative of or representative of is a thing that has happened somewhat consistently. I'm trying not to paint with too broad of a brush, but it does feel like what happened was a lot of Chinese-based businessmen decided to invest in football. And I think that kind of coincided with the Chinese push to win the World Cup and to expand their footprint in global football. And that's when Chinese clubs were spending a ton of money. But from what I understand, the situation became that these businessmen were taking money out of the Chinese economy to invest it into essentially failing businesses, because they had to support these clubs where they're spending more and more money. And so there became much harsher restrictions within China on moving money out of the country, investing it into foreign countries, and basically just making even those funds as readily available. And so then it's much harder for Chinese businessmen to then finance clubs, finance the debts that they have accrued. I think this happened with Inter and some of the kind of financial levers they have had to pull, and it's certainly happening with Reading. So it's a reminder that football can be a bit of a flash in the pan thing on some occasions, where you have a ton of money being spent and then you no longer have money being spent. And it's worth noting that the EFL found Da Yong to be a capable and fit owner right up until they didn't, and then the rug was pulled out, and now here we are.
Yeah, the other thing is the nature of the EFL is you always have that carrot of the Premier League, right? And so some of these owners, if they were rich enough and they had the resources to own a Premier League team, they would just buy a Premier League team. So they buy an EFL team, maybe then are always chasing that carrot and thinking, if we just spend another £50 million on this striker, that's the player that's going to get us to the Premier League. And so I think the nature of the EFL just makes it a little bit more volatile from a ownership point of view.
Yeah, well, we hope everything resolves amicably for Reading fans. Obviously, a very long-standing club. And we hope everything works out well there. Scott Goodhart, thank you very much for your question. Let's take a quick break. When we come back, we're talking about release clauses and the Confederations Cup. Do join us then. Total Soccer Show, welcome back to our listener questions. Patrick Delaney has come in here. How would football change if release clauses were required in all professional contracts. Would you want to see this rule implemented? While not technically required, pretty much all Spanish contracts have them already, so it's not too far-fetched, says Patrick. Joe, my feeling here is if it were a requirement to have a release clause, it wouldn't be too effective because clubs would just set them super high, like my release clause.
Which is what happens in Spain.
Yes. Yeah, that's exactly right. Where you get, Vinny Jr. and Lamine Yamal with astronomical, what would that be? $1 billion? There's $1 billion release clause in there somewhere. Yeah,
Vinny is $1 billion. Yamal is 1.1 billion, I think.
Yeah. So very attainable. So good to see that those are involved. Yeah. My answer to this, Ryan, is that I'm not sure it would change a ton if teams set them too high, which is where teams would trend here because they wouldn't want to lose players or risk losing players for less than market value. It could stall the market, right? If all the release clauses are so high, it could stall the market because no one would buy at that price, and the selling clubs wouldn't want to sell for less. I mean, it's a strange situation. You could still, though, set a release clause at $500 million and negotiate a deal that's lower than that. So it might not change a ton if we all just ignored them, but if we somehow sort of had to abide by them as buying clubs, I do think that would be a bit odd, but I don't think that would actually happen. On the player side, they still get to choose where they go, right? That's the thing I always try to draw attention to in transfers is three parties involved. Well, three primary parties involved. And that's the biggest reason why I don't think this would change a ton. If Arsenal want to pay a $50 million release clause that TSS has set for Graham Ruthven, and Graham doesn't want to go to Arsenal because he's a Sterling Albion man through and through, he doesn't have to go. Like, Graham can make that decision for himself. So it's not a particularly sexy answer. But my answer is,
we want to get paid, Joe.
Well, yeah, fair enough, Graham.
Just to clarify, if Arsenal are interested, I will take that call.
Okay, he's going to take the call. No guarantee he's going to sign the contract. Taylor, we should have set that release clause way higher than $50 million. That's what I'm realizing here.
Graham issues come and get me plea to Arsenal.
I mean, it's already a record release clause for the podcast industry, but man, that's just really, really disappointing. I thought Graham had more loyalty. So
here we are.
At the end of the day,
this is the problem.
At the end of the day, I don't think this would do much of anything, unfortunately.
Okay.
Yeah, I have it as I think it either doesn't have much of an impact for the reasons Joe's outlined, and then also to reiterate the setting transfer release clause is absurdly high, or I think there is a reality in which it has too much of an impact because I feel like clubs would never feel fully confident that they were going to be able to hold on to their players, as we've just experienced with Graham suddenly being out the door. And how do we replace and what do we do? I think that is the only like remember when Liverpool set the price for Suarez and then Arsenal beat it by £1
by £1, yeah.
And then that made Liverpool be furious and not sell Arsenal, or try to beat Arsenal to players and not sell them certain players down the road. That opens that door to a bit more player movement. To Joe's point, player would still have to agree, but if a club is going to offer an absurd amount of money at that point, is their head going to be turned? It just could create a lot of instability and uncertainty, but there's a lot of conditionals in there. So I don't think I would be in favor of it. And I would reiterate again, I think Spain has this because their law and legal system requires them.
Employment law.
Yeah, they have to have buyout clauses for all workers, not just footballers. You have to have a way to get out of unfavorable contracts when it comes to employment. So that is why it is so prevalent in Spain, where they do then set them quite high. So Graham, yours verbal agreement, yours is now 500 million euros.
Nice.
Yeah, and you've got to go to Joe Rogan.
Oh no, I'm out. Especially because I've learned recently that his episodes are 2 and 3 hours long. So, I mean, sometimes Taylor and I's 101s last that long. But yeah, I think Taylor, you mentioned the Spanish contracts. I find that really interesting because it is linked to the real world, and that's why players have to buy themselves out. So the way that works, I think we've covered this on the main show before, or the main show. I'm in 101 mode now on the feed before. Is that they have to pay it all at once, clubs. So most transfers are done in installments. With the Spanish release clause, you have to pay it all at once. And the way that it works is you have to give the money to the player, who then gives it to the league, I believe. I'm not entirely sure why the league is involved with that, but I remember Ander Herrera, basically the men in suits with the briefcases turning up to the league office to activate his release clause. So I find all that stuff really interesting.
Can I stop you there? So Neymar, when he went from Barcelona to PSG, was it 220 million or whatever the release clause was?
I know what you're going to ask.
Neymar got 220 million euros and his dad didn't run off with it. Is that what you're saying?
For once, yes.
Wow.
Yeah, there's
That's
a first
amazing.
time for everything.
That we
yeah.
know of until until Barca opened that briefcase, and it was
They've never opened that briefcase yet.
It was one row of €100 notes, and then underneath it was just newspaper. That's it. It was a ringer.
They're saving that money for a rainy day, and when they open it, they're going to be disappointed. I also find that deal funny because Barcelona put in that, what was it, €222 million release clause. They were like, nobody will ever pay that. It's like Real Madrid putting in the billion for Vinicius Jr. and then PSG found that money down the back of the sofa. And
Oh
paid it.
no, guys, the Doughboys are calling. I think that they want to meet Graham's release clause. Now we're in trouble. Now there's a bidding war. I don't know what to do here. I don't know what you're celebrating. You don't get the 500 million. I guess you do briefly, but then you give it to us.
If the deal's done in Spain, then if I insist on that,
I forget
do I
how it
get
works.
Yeah.
See, this is the problem. This is why I don't like this.
All right. Okay, so the ultimate answer to Patrick Delaney's question is it doesn't have too much consequence, and maybe these billion-dollar release clauses are kind of for show until someone pays one of them.
Yeah, I also think loads of players have release clauses anyway. Like Liam Delap apparently is available for £40 million when Ipswich get relegated. So I think a few clubs are going to jump on that.
Yeah, so they pay 20, right? So that's a decent return on investment for them at least.
1 year, yeah.
Yeah, there you
A
go.
lot of tractors you can buy with that.
Indeed. A lot of East Anglian fun to be had with £40 million. Patrick, thank you very much for your question. One last one for this episode from Richard Rolson. Was it a mistake that FIFA ended the Confederations Cup? And why did FIFA end the competition? There was 10 editions, Taylor, of the Confederations Cup between 1992 and 2017. Of course, contested by the holders of each of the 6 continental championships. Pretty fun concept on paper, at least, for a summer preceding a World Cup. Taylor, my impression that the answer to this question is ultimately that it was replaced by the Club World Cup.
Yeah.
And they could make more money from the Club World Cup.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, in that way, it is we have to wait and see because we don't know how the expanded Club World Cup is going to go because it was the expanded Club World Cup at that, right, that made them want to move away from the Confederations Cup. And so in that way, it's a bit like, do you want Pizza Hut or Domino's? Like, is that other one truly going to make you feel great about eating that pizza? Probably not.
I used to be a Pizza Hut guy, now I'm a McDonald's guy. So.
Why am I not surprised? That
Oh, you know, actually, you were not looking for answers. Sorry.
Well, my original analogy was, would you rather drive a 2005 Ford Taurus or a 2003 Mercury Mystique? But then they stopped making the Mystique in 2000, Google told me, so that wasn't going to work. But either way, it's basically, if you get rid of the Confederations Cup, which itself was sort of it's just seen as a tune-up for the World Cup to make sure that the host country was up to task with hosting games, with scheduling things, to figure out any sort of wrinkles along the way. It never felt like a full tournament, and nor should it have, because otherwise that would water down the impact of the World Cup and the importance of the World Cup. So I get why they get rid of it. To bring in the expanded Club World Cup is also, I think, FIFA trying to exert their control of global soccer and remind everybody that they're the ones who actually calls the shots. But that still feels pretty arbitrary and very much like a money grab. So they got rid of a thing that didn't have that much impact and wasn't going to have that much appeal for a thing that I still don't think is going to have a ton of appeal, could have more impact. So in that way, I guess it's good for FIFA. But I don't think it's a mistake fully to get rid of the Confederations Cup, but I don't love what has replaced it, at least at present. We'll see. Maybe the Club World Cup will blow me away this summer, and it will be my new favorite thing.
Yeah.
I like the Confederations
Like
Cup.
Pizza Hut or Domino's.
Or your Mercury Mystique.
Yes.
I don't even know what those cars are.
Oh, they stopped making it in 2000, unfortunately.
Yeah.
I think Ford Taurus, I think that was what Truman had in the Truman Show. That's all I can remember about that car.
I just remember as a kid, they still make it. I think they look better now. I remember as a kid, even then knowing that is an objectively ugly car and not ever wanting to drive one. I apologize to Ford Taurus owners out there. I'm sure many of you are enthusiastic
think they're
Ford Taurus
sponsoring the
owners. And
show
to you
today.
I say, get better aesthetics. That's what I would
Today's
say.
episode brought to you by Ford. For more information, visit Ford.com. Graham, you were saying.
/ get better aesthetics.
Brian, can I tell you my favorite Ford joke?
Yes.
It's the Arrested Development one where George Sr. is test driving the new Ford, and they're talking about how bad the branding was on the Ford Bronco and how they just had to get rid of it. It had too much baggage, to which he immediately responds, "What am I driving?" And the dealer says, "The Ford Escape," which is hilarious to me that they replaced the Bronco with the Escape.
That is funny.
Well, you know. The Bronco didn't. So
Where did they get that idea from? Yeah.
I think it's a white one too, so that's even better. Yeah. Joe, how are these OJ jokes working out for you?
Oh, they're hitting one after the next, like one punch, the other punch.
Joe, do you remember the Confederations Cup? Like, because the last one was 2017, right? So
I remember it as a concept. I can't really place myself watching a specific Confederations Cup game live, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I always quite liked it. It felt like nobody took it too seriously, but it was just a nice warm up for the World Cup. It whet your whistle before the main tournament a year later. So
it did what?
Whet your whistle.
People
in the Discord like it when I say that.
Okay, good.
Grand of the people, Ryan. Come on.
Carry on.
So yeah, I'm with Taylor. I reserve the right to change my mind on the Club World Cup once it kicks off, which I kind of suspect I might do. But yeah, I don't know. Right now, I think I prefer the Confederations Cup. It almost got me up for the World Cup. It was a nice preview.
That's fair. I think ultimately we do need to give the Club World Cup a chance before we make a decision on that. But
I can say I think I feel pretty confident of where I'm going to land on the Club World Cup. I think I'm going to have fun during the tournament while also thinking that it's a bad idea. I'm pretty sure that's where I'm at, because the calendar is getting so crowded for a lot of these top players, and I do think that is problematic. At the same time, there are some really fun matchups that I like soccer and I'm going to be intrigued about and that I'm going to be excited to talk about. So I think both of those things can be true at the same time. Maybe if I took a harder moral stance on this, I mean, I don't think it's like a huge moral problem that players are playing a lot of games, but I do think that those things can be true together. And so for that reason, I'll say I don't really know if it was a mistake or not. What I will say is I don't think either one of these ideas really needs to exist. The Confederations Cup was kind of fun and silly. It's not like a slam dunk tentpole kind of event that absolutely needs to happen. And the Club World Cup is very much in a similar boat in that stage in my mind. But Ryan, if for no other reason than one is club soccer and one is international soccer, at least the people know where you stand on this topic.
That is quite right. That's why I'm giving that CWC a chance, baby.
That's right.
We shall see.
Quick.
I think as they're
That's
saying.
how you say that.
That's what they're all saying.
We're all doing it, right? Yeah.
I think for me personally, for the Confederations Cup, I think it says a lot that I didn't really realise it had gone until I read this question.
Really?
Wow.
It had been gone for like the best part of a decade.
Yeah.
Seconded.
There you go. Taylor's with
Oh
me.
wow.
Yep. Wow.
I mean, the real purpose of the Confederations Cup was genuinely to prepare the host country for the World Cup the next year, which is why the Club World Cup is happening in the US. I mean, Canada and Mexico have just been ignored in this equation, but that's why it's happening in the US this summer, is to prepare the US for the World Cup. So in that sense, it's the purpose of it is sort of the same. Like, the competition sort of exists in the same way. They've just changed the teams that are involved.
There we go. All right, Richard Ralston, thank you very much indeed for your question. Thank you to everybody who submitted a listener question for this episode. If you'd like to do so, totalsoccershow.com/questions. You can also contact us via our Discord server, patreon.com/totalsoccershow. We'll talk to you about old Ford models, soccer, anything you like in the Discord. We're happy to have the conversation. But for now, thank you very much, Taylor Rockwell, for all your insight and answering of questions.
Thank you very much, my friend.
Thank you very much, Joe
I will miss
Lowry.
you on the Champions League show, which happened yesterday. So never mind. Disregard this.
Hey, thanks, Ryan.
We got so close.
Thanks, Graham.
Thank you, Ryan. Say hello to Mickey and Minnie for me.
I will do, of course. Listener, thank you very much indeed for joining us on this episode. We'll be back on the feed very shortly. Have a wonderful weekend because it is Friday. Bye.
Hey.